This is a video for Stipple Wild. If you don't have Stipple Wild, these instructions will not be useful. Alright, I'm going to talk about the new opacity mask. And let's launch a new drawing. And I'm just going to hit start drawing and we'll take it from there. Alright, so I'll show you how to use the opacity mask because one, it's hard to find, it's hard to use this thing. But two, I'll compare it to the other mask and then I'll maybe show you some tricks you can do with it. Alright, so for my draw image, I'm going to pick this skull. And we'll go ahead, switch over to the white dots. For the sake of this, I'm just going to put this slider with auto off at about, I'll put the slider at about 25% or so. All right, so I'm going to switch over to white dots, or a black background, white dots. Okay, so now normally this is how we'd be drawing. I'll make these dots a little bit smaller. Brush size a little bit bigger. All right, so this is what we would be drawing at these settings. All right, so now to get to the opacity mask, click on the jitter slider, and you can click it again to open up the picture select. I'm going to use these flames, and we got to reposition these a little bit. And I already know the settings for this, but a lot of times you have to screw around a little bit. So now you got to click this checkbox that says opacity slash jitter. What that does is it converts the jitter image source slot into an opacity mask. And then we have to go to the levels and then use this jitter slider. And what we want to do, since we've got a bright image and we want to draw the bright spots, we want the bright spots to be our mask. We're gonna invert it, and then we're gonna pull this slider to about here. And as I said, I already messed around with these settings, so I know they're cool. But you do have to play around with this effect. All right, so let's hide the images. Let's hide everything. You see this? Now the flame is being drawn, or the skull is only being drawn in the portions of the flame that meet the, our threshold setting. However, unlike a regular mask, it's scaling the opacity by the darkness or the brightness of the source image itself. So the brighter spots of the image get a higher opacity and the darker spots of the image get a lower opacity. So now if I were to use this mask as just a regular mask, and I'm going to shut off these those other settings, and we'll draw it again. And I'll pull this to something similar. You'll see that we just get hard shapes because this mask is just hard cutoffs. So it's often very hard to control the mask if you're using a toned image. The masks are great for just black and white images. Those crazy dot masks that I make, or the crazy pattern masks that we all like to play with. Those things are great for the mask, the basic mask. But the opacity mask gives you these. I'm going to crank this up a little bit. Gives you this nice subtleness, this nice toned masked effect. So now this also gives you an opportunity to let's go and throw. Let's see if we got something. These are cool. So now we've got fire, and since we just put a rainbowy image in the color map, well, let's adjust this a little bit. So now this gives us an opportunity to have three images together, and let's go click on mask, and don't think I have these in a separate spot. All right. So now we could go. Okay, so now what I just did there is I added a striped pattern, although it's not seeming to come out very well. So I put in this striped mask, and this was probably a bad example because it really doesn't use up much of the screen. Let me pick something else. Classic. So now we can use, so now we have a flame opacity mask. We have a skull draw image. We have a rainbowy color map, and we have this tight concentric dot mask. So now we're blending together four images, all all being conveyed by the dot size and the dot color and the dot uh, opacity. So it's still all building it just with dots, or just, I mean, if you want to use the new tools, it's, with dot shapes too, but it's still building the image only with, atomized particles, only with dots or different size shapes. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, I'm pretty obsessed with that idea. So the mask just gives us another way to infuse images together. It's more useful and easy to use. I mean, once you find it, it's harder to find than the regular mask. But once you know where it is, it's actually more forgiving, and it's easier to use than the regular mask tool. And I think that it's going to be pretty useful for everybody. Um, what do we got on the clock? 7 minutes. Oh, that's not long enough for a video. Um, Here is another cool trick. Let's see. Of course, gonna have to go digging for it. Okay, so I have this canvas, and now this is a very basic use of this. I'm gonna shut off all these nifty effects. I'm gonna go to white, and I'm gonna go to a black dot. I'm assuming you guys already know how to use this. If you're watching this video, you know how to use this. Um, all right, so now what I just did was I loaded this canvas, and now I'm going to draw the skull. And let's pull that up a little bit. And you see, it's kind of subtle. All right, there we go. You see the texture of the canvas is now coming through the image. Now, if we had tried to do this with just a mask, it really wouldn't work that well. And we could probably have used the draw image slot itself for this, but then we wouldn't be able to be drawing an image itself, right? So this is a very basic way to use this tool. And again, you can change the hardness, change the default opacity, make the dots a little bit bigger, and we can make this look, let's see. Get more of that texture in there by just controlling the levels manually. Um, yeah, that's about it. If you There's one other trick that's, I don't know, kind of cool. So now, say if I were to draw with white dots, I'm gonna shut off everything. So now I'm just drawing with white dots, right? Now, say I wanted to just draw freehand on the canvas. I could use, let's make these dots just a little bit smaller. Right, so now I'm kind of freehanding on the canvas. And if freehanding is all I need to do, I can pull this jitter up, and now I'm getting kind of random opacity settings on the fly because it's using jitter is scattering all the dots, but it's referencing this opacity mask for each dot's opacity. So it's basically just randomizing the opacity. Maybe if I use a different color, it'll look a little bit better. There you go. So some dots come in darker, some dots come in brighter. All right, well, that about wraps up the opacity mask. Again, let's go over that again. To get to the opacity mask, we load something into jitter, and then we click on the jitter opacity, so that's checked on, and then this slider itself gets controlled back or forth, back and forth. Sometimes you want it all the way to the left. It's easier to use if it's more towards the left, and that goes for the same whether you're on a regular or invert. If you have it more wide open, which means more to the left, you're gonna get more of your draw image to come through that mask. All right, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for using Stipple.